All right. Da-da-da-da. Bodybuilding knowledge, bro. Here live in the flesh. Here to talk about my first steroid cycle, which happened quite a while back. So I was always scared to take steroids, but I had been reading about them for 7 years before I started my first cycle. And what I did was one day I decided, after I hired Matt August as coach and everything, and that didn't work out, didn't help me reach my goals. That was when, one second, that was when I was sitting down on the couch one day at college, and I said to myself, you know what? I know what I want. I know what I have to do in order to get it. So I'm doing that. And so I got myself some steroids, and about 3 or 4 weeks later I was taking them. And I was starting with 600 milligrams of testosterone per week, and I front loaded that. I took 1.2 grams of testosterone. The first time I ever took steroids. I'd never taken any orals or any SARMS or anything like that. First time I ever took them, period, was I had two 1.5 milliliter syringes of testosterone, 400 milligrams per milliliter. And I shot one into each hip, on my right hip flexor and my left hip flexor, right on the diagonal front of my body, where that bone, where your hip bone is, right below that. I put in 600 milligrams into each hip. And I couldn't walk properly for the next 2 weeks. Hi, Michael. Yeah, I couldn't walk properly for the next 2 weeks. And because I had such bad post-injection pain from virgin muscles. So that 600 milligrams of testosterone that was sitting in each of my hip flexors, in those virgin muscles, I'd never received an injection before, just completely froze. And so for 2 weeks, to get off the couch and go to class, I had to take 1,000 milligrams of ibuprofen and wince my way to walk to class. I couldn't train, and I got obscene testosterone flu. It's where you get all the same symptoms of the flu, like chills, fever, sensitive, tender skin. You get all those symptoms from like an overdose or something of testosterone. And I had never had any in me before. Now my first application was 1,200 milligrams of testosterone. So anyways though, after those 2 weeks, well, after the first 7 days, I noticed I gained weight. So I gained 10 pounds in the first 7 days. And a lot of guys during their first cycle, they say like, a lot of times during that first 7 days, they'll say, oh, the first 7 days was the most incredible. I gained 10 pounds of muscle. But that's just the cosmetic effect of the drug starting to kick in. So that's what happened to me. I gained 10 pounds in the first week, but I didn't look any different. In fact, I looked a little bit less muscular and more just like a big blob. And I was like, okay. And so about 2 weeks went by, another few days went by. And so now I'm done with 2 weeks, and now I can get in the gym and train again. I start training, but my strength went down, and I was like, what the hell is this? So that was 3 weeks now. So now I'm at 3 weeks on 600 milligrams of testosterone front loaded, first injection at 1.2 grams. And at that 3 week mark, I noticed that I was looking like kind of like more just big and like a water balloon or something. Like I was expecting myself to get on roids, and start getting more muscular. But I actually lost muscularity these first 3 weeks on testosterone 600 front loaded at 1.2 grams, 1,200 milligrams. I lost muscle, or muscularity. I didn't look as muscular. I looked more fat and just like, yeah, just fat and like holding a lot of water and stuff. And I was like, what the hell is this? Thought I was supposed to get on steroids and like get all muscular and shit. And so then another week went by and now it was 4 weeks. And I was like, what the hell? Like I knew my product was legit, okay? Because after 2 weeks, I started getting estrogen symptoms. So I was getting burning in my nipples after the first 2 weeks. And so I was taking Nolvadex because I had Nolvadex and I had exemestane, and they were research chemical. I got them from like RUI, I think. And so I took care of the estrogen, but I knew the testosterone was working because I was having major estrogen symptoms. You know, I was having to take Nolvadex every day and exemestane most days. So now we're at 1 month in, and I'm like, what the hell, man? I'm not getting muscular the way that, you know, I intended to do this, you know, to start taking, when I made that decision, you know, to take steroids, it's because I came to the conclusion after all my trial and error that the only way to reach the physique goals that I had for myself was through doing that. And now I was on steroids, I was on real steroids, real testosterone, and I was having side effects, but I wasn't having my body change and look the way that I wanted to at all. I wasn't getting really more muscular, I was just getting bigger. Just in general, I looked bigger, not more muscular, just bigger. Not more muscular, just bigger. And I was like, fuck, this sucks. And so I was like, all right, man, fuck it. I'm gonna take Tren. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna see what this is all about. I'm just gonna, because I was like, I know my goal, so I'm just gonna like see what this shit is all about since this freaking testosterone isn't working. Just take Trenbolone. And so I got some Trenbolone. I got me some Trenbolone. And it was really potent Trenbolone. It was the most potent Trenbolone I've ever used. And I started injecting myself with that at 100 milligrams every other day. So 350 milligrams per week. Added that to my 600 milligrams of testosterone. And let me tell you, that did the trick. That got me what I was looking for. And it took 3 days. It took 3 days. So that whole month of front-loaded testosterone, 600 milligrams per week, front-loaded with 1,200 milligrams, wasn't even a little shit Hershey Kiss, a little Hershey Kiss shit on an outhouse toilet seat. It wasn't even that in comparison to 350 milligrams Trenbolone acetate per week. And so first day I took it, nothing happened. It just kind of felt like I put acid into my body. And then the second day, I didn't take any, nothing happened. Then the third day, I took my second 100 milligram dose. And I got Tren Cough like you wouldn't believe. I injected it in, and right when I finished the injection, I pulled the needle out, and some of that Tren followed me out, where there was some Tren on the tip of the needle, and it went out with the needle as I pulled the needle out, and went across some veins. Because that's how you get Tren Cough, is that Tren gets in your veins, and then it goes through your heart and your lungs, and it gets expelled, whatever is in there. It causes an allergic reaction, and you expel some shit out of your lungs, like from your blood. It clears itself out of your lungs by exhaling it. Some of the shit, whatever is the thing that makes you allergic in the Trenbolone. And so, or just the Trenbolone molecule itself causing an allergic reaction. So, doubled over. I'd read about Tren Cough, so I knew I wasn't gonna die. But I doubled over, you know, I took the needle out, and as soon as I took it out, all of a sudden it was like this feeling of like my head swelling, right? And I got, I looked in the mirror and it was pink blotchy everywhere, like pink and white blotchy all over my face. And then right at that moment, I was like forward, I doubled over in half, almost fell on the ground. And I'm just coughing, like, like basically like I'm gonna vomit. That's like how bad I'm coughing. And I can't breathe, but maybe a little bit I can breathe. But this goes on for about 3 minutes and I'm gonna fall over and like pass out. So I try to like get on the ground and like get to the bed. So I kind of like make it over to the bed after like 45 seconds, facing the ground, still on my feet, but facing the ground, coughing. And now I'm laying on the bed and I'm still coughing like I'm gonna fucking die. And I'm still having this massive allergic reaction to the Trenbolone. And my face is all pink and everything. My eyes are bright red with just tears. I'm not crying, but they're cheering, so there's water shooting all out. And then after about 5 minutes, it begins to go away. So it just starts to dissipate. And, as I used Trenbolone more, I realized that that's the way it always is. It seems like you're gonna like die when you're in the middle of one of those coughs. It like really actually seems like I'm not gonna make it through this. But you always do. and it always goes away right when it seems like, it's got to this point where you're gonna die or whatever. It always goes away right at that moment. And so I got up and I was like, fuck. And this is my third day, right? And then I went and ate breakfast because I always gave my shot in the first thing in the morning. And so now this is the third day of the Trenbolone after the 1 month of testosterone that was a failure. And go and eat breakfast, and then it's about lunchtime and I'm about to go to the gym. And I go upstairs and I look at myself in the mirror. I shit you not, man. My body changed shape. Over those 3 days it was gradual, but then the kicker was taking that second shot of 100 milligrams Tren Ace. And within those like 4 hours between when I shot that, got the Tren Cough, and then ate breakfast and then came back up, it was like overnight. I like became, like resembled the look that I wanted, like this kind of look, around the perimeter of your body where it's like traps, shoulders, tricep roundness, forearms, like that. And then it like goes to like the hands, so it's like this kind of look as it goes out. That was, traps, and then it goes shoulders, and then it goes, there's a tricep like round part, and then it's like the forearm sticking out belly. I wanted that look. And so on this third day now, after I took that shot, that 100 milligram shot, and had breakfast, all of a sudden I had that look when I went and looked in the mirror again, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And it was like overnight. And so I experienced the cosmetic effect of the drug through that. That was the cosmetic effect of the drug. It wasn't that I build muscle. Nothing can change your body so quickly like that. It can't build that much muscle overnight like that. But I appeared, in my first 3 days on Trenbolone acetate, I appeared to have put on 10 pounds of muscle. It wasn't muscle, but I mean, it was fuel storage. It was transient fuel storage, water and glycogen, carbohydrate fuel storage that the Trenbolone had loaded into my muscles. But that only took 3 days for me to appear vastly different. My body looked not the same, and people noticed. I went downstairs later that day. I was eating dinner, and I cooked. And my roommate, who he wasn't my roommate, he was my housemate, who at the time, we didn't even really get along that well. But he said, oh, what are you cooking? And I said chicken and vegetables. And he said, you've been hitting the gym pretty hard lately, right? And I was like, yeah, man, I've really been going at it. And he was like, I can tell, man, I can tell. And so people were seeing this, right? And so now, I kept on taking the Trenbolone, and dude, it was just absurd, dude. It was absurd. Like the testosterone, didn't do shit. Okay, it was real, but just for like the bodybuilding type look that I wanted, and that goal, which is the same of a lot of you guys, which is like that look that you see other guys have that looks really incredible and like 3D and really separated and shit like that. Testosterone was not the way for that for me. And, but this Trenbolone was. And so I kept taking that. I was taking 100 milligrams every other day. And man, by 3 months into the cycle, so 2 months on the Trenbolone, 8 weeks on the Trenbolone, and still doing 600 milligrams per week of testosterone. I had put on 20 pounds of solid muscle, but 25 pounds of weight. But yeah, so I mean, I was leaner. I was 25 pounds heavier. I was leaner, but I only think it was probably 20 pounds of actual like tissue muscle. But dude, I transformed. I became, like at my college, I was easily the biggest guy there. But that took about another month or two after that. So like a total of 4 or 5 months to become like that. And I mean, they were on stuff too, but mine was more potent. This Trenbolone that I was on was so potent, man. I've never used Trenbolone as potent as this stuff that I got my hands on my first cycle. It's by far the most potent, just anabolic I've ever used. Because like just going to the gym on that stuff, it was like, I was like high. Because it gave me like so much energy and euphoria to be like using my muscles, and like they couldn't get tired. I would work out for 3 hours straight, and every workout I would gain like 2 to 3 reps on the same weight for each exercise. So like, maybe at the first week with the Trenbolone, I started with like 80-pound dumbbells, bench pressing them for like 5 reps. But by like 8 weeks in, I was pressing like 95-pound dumbbells or 100-pound dumbbells for like 8 to 10 reps. So, I remember I was bench pressing 225 for like 3 to 5 reps, and it would feel like it was like killing me, like crushing me, like hurting my wrists and shit. When I first started, before I started, taking roids when I was natural, and then by the time that I was 8 weeks in on this Trenbolone cycle, I remember I was repping 275 on the bench press for 5 to 6 reps, and there was no pain either, like no wrist pain or anything like that. So like even my joints were like anabolic. And so yeah, I mean, I went from just like, I stayed on that cycle for 20 weeks, or I stayed on it from January, and I stayed on it until like halfway through May. So that was like 4.5 months or so. So yeah, it was like 18 to 20 weeks. I was on the Trenbolone, 100 milligrams every other day, and the testosterone 600 milligrams. And sometimes I would also take because I had some other stuff too, so I would take like 25 milligrams of Dianabol, like pre-workout sometimes too. Like maybe like once or twice a week I would do that. Yeah, and that was my first cycle, and it was, I mean, I looked like a different person by the time I was done with that first cycle. Like I literally looked like a different person, because I went from just like a normal average looking guy that, he goes to the gym, but it's nothing to like shake a stick at. Like you could see me and think, yeah, that guy looks like he works out. He looks like he lifts weights, but not like, oh, that guy's fucking jacked or anything like that, nothing like that. Just like if you don't take hormones now, just like you, just a regular guy that goes to the gym and does it consistently, who's natural. That's what I look like. And by the time that I was done with this 18 to 20 weeks, this is before Thailand, this is when I was in college. When I was done with the 18 to 20 weeks, I looked like a different person. Everybody, I was a different person basically, like because of like how like people would treat me and stuff. Like it changed like the world for me. It changed the way those 18 to 20 weeks on Trenbolone and testosterone changed the way that the world looked at me, and changed the way that the world interacted with me. people didn't treat me the same anymore. So like respect from strangers, and like a lot more respect, really. Like it was really interesting just seeing how, like, just the fact of like being on drugs, like taking steroids, like made people respect me. People I didn't know, just, and you do it too, because it's natural, okay? Now that I've been on them and I've had time to process what's happened, now I understand why. And it's because we all do this. We give respect to large, physically imposing humans. It's just natural. That's the way it's always been. When we were humans evolving in the wild, we had to do that. We had to give, it became an instinct. Don't insult that person. You know, be a little bit more extra careful or polite around that person who has, you know, a very big, imposing stature, is very powerful and physically strong, stuff like that. You know, it's natural. It's biologically natural. And so I started experiencing this and seeing that it was real, and seeing like, wow, now I'm experiencing some of these same effects that I used to see guys who were like born naturally huge get. So I'm sure that you guys have seen some men who are born, you know, like 6'5", 6'6", even 6'4", and you know, they're naturally born with a handsome face, and then they also have a really big skeleton, like a really big wide clavicle, and then they have this, you know, huge, massive skeleton, you know, big long body, you know, so they don't actually have to be that muscular, but they just are just born with this really massive, physically imposing, large body. It's mostly the skeleton, and then they're just kind of like a thick person in general. And I saw these people getting advantages, and I saw them getting advantages just while I was living my life, and saying, hey, look, these guys who are big and physically imposing like this, like, people respect them for no reason, and like girls like them, and they get like good opportunities in school or like business opportunities. And I just noticed that the world treated these larger humans differently, you know, and I wasn't getting treated in that same way. And so when I took this first steroid cycle for these 18 to 20 weeks, I started getting all of those benefits into my life that I had seen those guys, that I had seen them getting, you know. Naturally, life was like that to them, being like the biggest, strongest, most powerful, physically powerful, imposing people around. But now that was me. And now the world started treating me like that. And it was just such a life-changing experience. It opened my eyes, really opened my eyes to just a lot of things about life and the world in general. But yeah, as far as like working out on the Trenbolone, the pumps were just unreal, especially on that first cycle. I'd say on your first cycle, your body has an extra sensitivity to male hormones that it never really gets again. That first cycle, when your body has never experienced strong, high dosages of male hormones before, it responds like a motherfucker. So I would get pumps that they'd be so big, you know, in my forearms, in my triceps, in my biceps, in my shoulders. The pump would be so extreme during that first cycle that I wouldn't even be able to move. But it wasn't just that. It wasn't just that I couldn't move, like my arm would be stuck and it couldn't function because it was so pumped. It would actually just be sitting there throbbing in extreme, like agonizing pain, because there was so much pressure inside the muscles that it was like tearing the muscle cells, because there was so much blood in there that it was like nearly, and there was so much pressure, you know, exploding outwards, that it was like it was putting tension on the muscles, and they were like borderline exploding. And I actually would get like explosions in my arms, like in my forearms. After I would be, you know, halfway through my workout, there would be all kinds of veins that were in the skin that would all be blown. And so I'd have all these blown up veins all over my skin. You would see like bleeding under the skin and veins that had been, you know, like blown up and destroyed. It would be right visible here in my forearm. And this would happen whenever I would do, mostly when I would do deadlifts on my first cycle. On my first cycle when I would do deadlifts and a few other exercises. But when I would get done, or no, not when I get done, just in the middle of it, I'd look down and I'd be a little bit worried because I'd be like, what the fuck? And in my arm, in my forearm, the veins would explode and there would be like bleeding all in the skin or under the skin, through the skin. It wasn't bleeding like I couldn't touch the blood. It didn't come out. But you could see that the veins it was visible under the skin. You could see, oh, the veins exploded. So that's how extreme the pumps were. It was just unbelievable. So also during that first cycle, oh yeah, the foot pumps too. The foot pumps, I had the foot pumps when I was walking. So the arch of your foot gets pumped because it's a muscle too. And it's got to keep that arch of your foot. So when I'd be walking, usually on an uphill, my feet would get, the arch of my foot, the muscle in there would get pumped. And it would be so extreme and cause me so much agonizing pain because it was the same thing where it was like, it was so pumped that it was like borderline exploding. Like the muscle tissue was under extreme pressure because it had too much volume inside. And it was under extreme pressure, borderline exploding. And I would have to just stop walking to school or walking at school or whatever, and I'd just have to sit down and wait at least 5 minutes for it to go away and then limp the rest of the way back to class or school or whatever. So I experimented a bit during that too because since I found that really legitimate source with that really good Trenbolone, I also ordered some Masteron and had my first experience with that, which was mostly acne and prostate problems. So I ordered a Masteron, and it was Masteron, and it just blew my prostate up. Made it hard to pee, made me have a weak stream. It's taking 600 milligrams per week, Masteron Enanthate. And made it hard to pee. Prostate blew up. Fucking sucked. Didn't build any muscle. But made me have acne, and it made my skin get really oily. So that was the Masteron. And then, like I said, I experimented with a little bit of D-ball. Sometimes I take 25 or 50 milligrams of D-ball pre-workout once or twice a week during that cycle. So yeah, looked completely different when I was done. And afterwards, you know, that was when I decided, you know what? This is not, I don't want to go back to being like in this world with screwed up hormone levels. I like to not be natural and not have natural hormones. I like to take a testosterone injection from now on to give myself my hormones. That's what I decided after that cycle. How do you fix the prostate? You reduce your estrogen. You stop taking the offending compound, the offending chemical. You have to stop it. And then you get your estrogen down, and if it still doesn't go away, then you got to go off steroids for a while. And then it'll usually go away because it's usually a hormonal thing. And it's like, you know, somebody was asking me about this with Gyno earlier too. They're like, you know, when you get Gyno, or like when you notice Gyno symptoms, like how long do you have to react? And because, you know, they're saying like you're good on your cycle. Let's say you're on your first cycle and you have no estrogen symptoms. He was wondering, you know, like, will I wake up in the morning one day and just like be fucked and have Gyno? Like, ta-da, magic overnight. I grew a little tit with a lump in there, and I was able to assure him that that's not how it works, you know. Actually, the way it works when you get the estrogen symptoms on cycle is you'll first start noticing your nipples are like burning or itchy, or you'll notice them like with your shirt. And once that happens, that means you need to take your anti-estrogen. So that is a good, when you feel that burning or itching feeling on your nipple, that's like a good indicator, like, oh, I need to take my Arimidex. And so somebody earlier was wondering, how much time do you have to react and take the Arimidex? You know, once you notice the burning or itching on your nipples, and you have about 48 hours. When you notice that, you have about 48 hours to react and take an anti-estrogen tablet or Nolvadex until that that burning and itchiness is going to set in, and you won't just have a swollen, inflamed nipple anymore, but the actual gland under your nipple tissue will start to form a hard ball that kind of feels like lumpy or granular, like grains of rice, but like pressed into a hard ball, or like a frozen peas or something. So that's the way that that your nipple will feel once you have gyno. Like then you have gyno once it's like that, and that takes it for that to start to set in. That takes about 48 hours after first noticing my nipples are burning and itching. You got about 48 hours to react, and then you're gonna get this frozen pea, hard granular thing in there, okay? And so now you know how long you have to react before that happens. Take your medicine, take your anti-estrogen medicine before that 48 hours, because once you get that hard thing in there, now you still got options. You're not totally fucked, but it's gonna be a lot harder. So if you catch it before it gets to that, you know, hard granular thing in there, then, you know, you just take the tablet, the anti-estrogen tablet, and whatever swelling or whatever is in there, or itching or whatever, it just goes away. It's gone in, you know, 2 or 3 hours. But once it's become that hard granular thing, it's not just gonna go away. What you're gonna have to do in that case is, you know, reduce any estrogen compounds that you have in your stat. So like if you're taking testosterone, if you want to get rid of that hard lump in your nipple, then you're gonna have to lower your testosterone down to TRT, you know, 1 cc per week, or go off of it completely. And if you're taking Dianabol or anything that produces estrogen, you're also gonna have to stop taking that. And then you're gonna have to start taking Nolvadex, and taking Nolvadex and Letrozole together. And you keep taking, you know, that until it shrinks back down. And normally, if you know, caught that early, you know, let's say the first, again, 48 hours or 72 hours that it went from being just burning and itchy, and now, you know, you got that first 48 hours, and now the next 48 hours to 72 hours, you know, it's going to be getting a bigger lump. And then if you catch it in that phase, now you can do this thing where you shrink it, you know, over like 3 weeks by taking Nolvadex every day or something without taking other gear at the same time. So that's the way that gyno forms. Okay, I'm going to look at some questions now. All right. Drum Pogrom says, I'm on an Anavar only cycle right now. First time ever doing this. So far it's been like 12 days, and I guess so far I don't notice much at all. Love your vids, by the way, man. All right, Drum Pogrom. I have to know how much Anavar you're taking. Because if you're taking like 20 to 30 milligrams a day, you're not going to notice much. It's not going to do much since you're doing it without testosterone. Like 50 to 60 milligrams, you'll start noticing. You'll start noticing if you have real stuff. What do you think about SARMS, asks Todd Wodkowski. I think that some SARMs work. I think that, go to my website, go to bodybuilderinthailand.com and read the SARMS articles that I've written recently. I've written an article on LGD 4033, S23 recently, within the last week. So you need to read those articles there to see my opinions about SARMS. What about prostate? Frank asks, what about prostate cancer and estrogen? What aromatase inhibitor to use? Yes, that's a really good question and good thing to be keeping in consideration, because estrogen combined with high DHT causes prostate cancer. Estrogen is a cancer causer. So you got some guys on YouTube that are giving out kind of like bad advice about not taking anti-estrogen tablets because like I've heard from people telling me that Stan Efferding tells them not to take anti-estrogen tablets with their testosterone. Okay, well, like, understand then that if you don't take that and you have high estrogen levels that are not normal, that estrogen does cause cancer and it has health effects to you. Estrogen is responsible for a lot of breast cancer. You can get breast cancer as a male, especially if you start growing Gyno. And it's also, when it interacts with dihydrotestosterone in your prostate, it really makes it flare up, and it's also responsible for prostate cancer. So there's other health effects too. You need to keep your estrogen in range. It's very foolish not to if you're going to use roids. So some guys say, you know, oh, I'm going to use Masteron instead of an AI, instead of an aromatase inhibitor, an anti-estrogen. Where they say, I'm going to use Proviron. It's usually Masteron though, because GH15, this guy from the IFBB Pro said that. And so that doesn't do it. That's still going to give you prostate cancer, because you have to, so the Masteron, it doesn't actually kill the estrogen. It doesn't lower the estrogen in your body. It just competes with it for the estrogen receptor, and like blocks it, like outcompetes it or blocks it from attaching to the estrogen receptor. But then you still have all that estrogen floating around in your body. It's just not able to communicate with your body. So that's not the right way to do it. Don't take Masteron or Proviron instead of Arimidex or Letrozole or Exemestane, okay? That's foolish and uninformed. Brian says, first time running Tren, absolutely unforgettable. Sounds like your experience was similar to mine. You started your first cycle, Billy, but you still haven't finished, and it's been 3 decades, huh? Yeah, so the hair, somebody was asking about their hair. And so the thing with the hair is that if you're gonna lose it, you're gonna lose it, okay? Steroids don't cause you to lose hair, but they speed up the process if you're genetically predisposed. So you see my hair? I've had my hair like this. This has been my hairline since I hit puberty. So when I was like 12 years old, my hair used to come back to here, okay? Or at least like come to here. And then by the time that I turned like 15, it had receded to this point, okay? Which is not recession, it's just a normal, you know, men have big foreheads, and and they're, you know, adult men don't have, you know, usually hair that comes way down. That's more of a, it's more of a feminine trait. You know, steroids have given me zero hair loss, zero. And you look at other people too, like look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, look at Jay Cutler, look at Lou Ferrigno. None of these guys lost their hair. I'm just saying, you know, famous guys who don't have hair transplants, who, you know, everyone knows they use steroids. And so that, you know, those guys never lost their hair either. And that's the reason why, is because it's hair loss is genetic. If you're going to lose your hair, it's in your genetics, and you're going to no matter what you do. But if you use steroids, it will speed it up if you are genetically predisposed to that, okay? So if you were born with the genetics where someday you're gonna go bald and you use steroids, then you'll likely go bald, you know, when you use steroids, because that's gonna speed it up, so that instead of going bald later in life or whatever, or, you know, slowly over time, not later in life, slowly over time, it's gonna make you go bald now. But for a guy like me, or Jay Cutler, or Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is not genetically predisposed to balding, we do not have male pattern baldness in our genes. no amount of steroids or any kind of steroids will ever cause us to lose our hair because it's not in our genetics. So the reason why steroids cause male pattern baldness in those who are genetically predisposed. Cool. Dr. Artop, from Russia. Hello. Yeah. So if you have the genetics for being bald, DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone, your hair follicles have receptors, because your skin and your hair is highly sensitive to male hormones, okay? That's why when you hit puberty, you get more acne, or why people, like on steroids, sometimes they have acne. Or, also steroids make you grow more body hair. It makes you grow hair under, natural steroids make you grow hair under your armpit in puberty, They make you grow facial hair, etc. So the hair and the skin are super sensitive organs in your body they're so sensitive to male hormones, okay? And they have receptors for male hormones in them. And so the people who have they were born with the genetics to go bald sometime in their life, what's triggering that is it's a dominant trait. So it's a dominant trait, and it's passed along on the X chromosome. So from the mother's side, it's passed along from the mother's side. And it's a dominant trait. And basically, when the hair follicles in your head, when those receptors are stimulated strongly by male hormones, by androgens, they die. And so it's a genetically dominant trait passed on from your mom's side, where if your hair follicle cells get a lot of presence of male hormones, they die. So if you are genetically predisposed to that and you take gear, your hair follicles on your top of your head, they die, because that's the message that dominant trait communicates to them and has them do, and you're bald. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. So that's like Russian roulette, But I don't think it really happens like overnight. Again, it's like the same thing with Gyno. It's not like you wake up one morning and, because I've had some of my friends, who were young guys go bald from using testosterone and Trenbolone. And when they didn't go bald overnight, but they did go bald after using it for like a year and a half, or 2 years. Then they would be like pretty much completely bald, going from just a little bit bald before. They were just like starting to bald, and then after a year and a half of like heavy steroid use, they were like bald. So yeah, but it wasn't an overnight thing. So they could have stopped, but usually by the time they do stop, a year or whatever into it, it's too late. So it's one of those things. It's like the same thing with girls. It's the same thing with Gyno. You get Gyno, you got to stop what you're doing and make sure you don't get any more Gyno. Get rid of the Gyno. If you're a girl and you start taking steroids and your pussy starts growing, you have to stop taking steroids, or else it's permanent. And if you're a dude and you're taking steroids and your hair starts falling out, you have to stop, or else it's permanent. Somebody asked, does testosterone to estradiol ratio have an effect on libido? Yeah, it has a huge effect on libido. If your estrogen does get high, like if you start getting the burning, itchy nipples from having a high estrogen, you'll have a huge sex drive increase after you take that anti-estrogen tablet, like Arimidex or Letrozole or Exemestane, Aromacin. Once you take that, like the next day, you'll notice like the sex drive will come it'll make itself known to you. That's how much of a boost it will be. It's like you'll have the urge whether you want to or not. Yeah, so the ratio has a huge, it's mostly like if it's out of range. Like if the estrogen is too low, your sex drive is destroyed. It's destroyed. And your brain like doesn't function right. It's like you can't work, you have no energy, you just want to sleep if it's too low. Like if it's 0, and then if it's too high, it's like you feel weird, feel emotional, and you know, sex drive is like not that good. It's got to be in the right spot. It's got to be in range. And once it's in there, then everything is great. And troubleshooting that without having to get blood work like once a week is something that you learn with experience. You start like knowing your body's signs of like what's happening when your hormone levels are in different ranges and what that feels like. Like each person has different like little sensations and things that they'll pick up. Did I notice any facial hair growth? No, but I have noticed over time, the longer I've taken roids, the more body hair I have got. So, yeah, like, I'm still growing more body hair. So I just recently turned 30 years old, and I'm still growing like hair, like new dark hair on my back. And like, I mean, I don't know if I'm growing any more facial hair because I got facial hair really early. I started growing facial hair when I was like 14. But I'd say body hair. I've continued increasing the amount of my body that is growing dark hair more and more and more the entire time that I've been using gear. The blood work that you need, a lot of people use Private MD Labs. There's a website by that name, Private MD Labs. And if you're in America, or I think the UK too, what you do is you go on there and you order a hormone panel, like testosterone, estradiol test. And then there's labs all over, like any city, like if you live in a major city anywhere, they have like, they contract out to these labs. A lot of them are LabCorp labs. And so you just go show up at the lab at somewhere in your city, and they take a vial of your blood there, and then you go home. And about a week later, the results have been analyzed and they get sent to your email. And that's, you know, you don't have to go through your doctor. If you do that, you can just do it yourself. Costs like somewhere between like $60 to $100 to do that. So this is a good question. What is the best testosterone dosage that makes you more productive? So testosterone propionate, it just feels different than the other testosterones. You know, there's a thing that people say where they say, you know, every kind of testosterone is testosterone. It's all the same. Okay, that's true to an extent. It is the same chemical, but the speed at which it is released into your system and which it is metabolized and destroyed from your system changes the perceived effects, the effects that you feel and see even. The faster it hits your system and the more concentrated it hits your system, produces a much more bodybuilding friendly effect. So if you have your testosterone, I like to shoot 100 milligrams of propionate every day. That, I mean, that's awesome. In Thailand, I would do that because there's pharmaceutical grade testosterone in Thailand called, it's made by it's made in Bangkok, and the company is licensed by the government there. It's called Testosterone. And it's 50 milligrams per milliliter. It's 2 milliliter ampules in Thailand. And It's pharmaceutical grade human testosterone propionate, and you take one of those. I would take one of those ampules in the morning, and it gave me no pip, give me no swelling, no pain and no swelling or anything like that, no welts. I would just put it in, and the rest of my day would be fantastic. And during the next 2 hours, I'd feel like more energy coming up, and I'd be wanting to work, and I'd feel focused. And then, I'd do that in the morning, first thing when I woke up, and, be energized, focused, but not too hard of a libido and distracted or something like that, but just on top of my game, killing it. And I would feel it like a wave. It would be a wave that would come up, and I'd ride the wave until the afternoon, the early evening. And then, I would start feeling more chill out. So, common misconception is that testosterone enanthate releases slowly, like over a week. Testosterone enanthate releases its peak blood levels into your bloodstream 24 hours after the injection. And I know this because I've used pharmaceutical grade Bayer Proviron from Germany many times, and it says this on the insert. They've done studies on their product showing that their testosterone enanthate achieves peak blood levels 24 hours after the first injection. And actually, after it shows a graph in the little insert that comes with the box of Testoviron from Germany. And on the insert, it shows a graph that shows if you take 1 cc, 250 milligrams, how much is released into the average person's blood each day, because they did testing with a bunch of subjects and then made an average. And so 10% actually of that dose that you take gets released into your bloodstream after 24 hours. So you take 250 milligrams, wait 24 hours, you wake up the next day, you will have 25 milligrams of testosterone in your blood from that shot, okay? And then after that 24 hours, the amount that gets released each day keeps on going down, but it stays relatively elevated until about the 3rd day. And then by the 4th day, on the 4th day, you're only getting about 10 milligrams of testosterone released in your blood that day. Whereas the first day after your shot, you were getting 25 milligrams released in your blood that day. So by 7 days, on the 8th day after a testosterone enanthate shot, you're only getting about 1 milligram of testosterone released into your blood from that shot 8 days ago on that 8th day. So then we go to testosterone propionate. It's so fast. It peaks in your blood 60 minutes, or maybe an hour and a half, 60 to 90 minutes after injection. And that's why you feel like a rush or like a come up on it, like where you take it in the morning, and then as your day goes on, it's like you can kind of ride that wave of energy and productivity and focus. And then by the time, because it peaks after like 60 to 90 minutes. And then by the time that, it's evening or it's nighttime or whatever, then it's not quite so peaked anymore. So you're feeling more chill. But, so for example, if you take 100 milligrams of testosterone propionate, that stuff's in and out of your system in 3 days. So on the 3rd day, you take the shot, 1 day, and then, you go the next day. You go the next day after that, it's like gone. Like it's only in your system for like 48 to 72 hours, and then it's gone. So you're getting, like, on that first day, you're getting the majority of that testosterone released into your blood in like 60 to 90 minutes. And during the rest of the course of that day, like if you take 100 milligrams of testosterone, during that first 24 hours, you're getting like 60 milligrams of testosterone into your blood. It's almost all going to be being released into your blood on that first day, and then, a little bit on the 2nd day, and then by the 3rd day, it's out. It's gone. So That's why it has such a different effect. You know, if you've ever used test propionate, you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll know that it's different, man. It's like a different drug than testosterone enanthate, than slow-acting testosterone. It just doesn't, the way it reacts with your body is completely different. All right. Yeah, somebody, yeah, it does grow your dick like really slowly, like over like years, and like not much, right? But like, I remember that there was this video on Rich Piana's channel where he said like, steroids and growth hormone grow your penis. It's pretty funny, but he wasn't lying. Like, I'm talking like, if you take pharmaceutical grade growth hormone and like at least a gram of testosterone at the same time, and then you're taking, you know, like pharmaceutical grade growth hormone, and you're doing that for, you know, at least 1 year at the very minimum, but more like 2 years, you know. It's like, yeah, like pretty much everybody that does that has their dick grow like at least, you know, like a ½ inch. I'm not talking like more than a ½ inch, or like, you know, maybe 3/4 of an inch or something like that. But it's like very, very slowly, like over time. It's not something that is like, oh, you take like a couple month cycle. No, it's like only if the person is like dedicated to PED usage. Like if the person is dedicated to PED usage and they're doing it, you know, over years, yeah, you know, having increased male hormones and having, you know, growth hormone in you, which, you know, grows everything at the same time, you know, and there's like more blood in that area, and so it's stimulated to grow, and it just does very, very slowly over time. But it's not gonna like change your life or anything like that. Am I not afraid of acromegaly from growth hormone? Are your fingers thick from growth hormone? I get carpal tunnel symptoms on growth hormone, where, you know, in my wrists around here, like I'll feel like a burning, and also my fingers fall asleep, my fingers and hands, so they start to feel tingly and numb, especially if I was doing something like riding a motorcycle or mowing the lawn or something like that. Oh my God, that would be very hard to be doing those kinds of activities on a good dosage of growth hormone. Acromegaly is another one. It's a slow disease that happens over time from having too much growth hormone. So personally, I'm not using insane. You know, I haven't used growth hormone since last August 2018, and when I did, I used 4 IUs of Norditropin per day for 1 year straight. And, you know, for about 2 months during that time, I think I actually used 6 IUs of Norditropin per day. And then for maybe another 2 weeks or so, just experimenting, I used like 8 to 10 IUs of Norditropin per day. That was just to experiment though, but that, you know, that was a full year nonstop. And I never got any acromegaly systems, but it was probably the best bodybuilding drug that I've ever used, you know, other than just, you know, like some basic steroids. Like going on pharmaceutical growth hormone like helps you look the way that you've always wanted to, especially if you like have used steroids and then you thought to yourself like, oh, this didn't quite do what I wanted it to do. Like take pharmaceutical grade growth hormone and stack it with it, and then you'll get what you want. All right, I'm gonna go home. I've been doing this for 60 minutes. Back workout today. Ate some Smarties pre-workout because they're solid dextrose. Bye-bye.